have real pre-qualification data before I would pick up the phone, right? So that I would actually know who can pay and how much. 75% of the budget is just being blown on people who literally can't afford it. Get more leads, have actual data to know who's pre-qualified. Have a happy team.
All right. Welcome back. Welcome back. So today I have on a really fun, neat, interesting guest in his company. But before we get into that, Grant Eilertson with SimpleCheck. Grant, good to see you again, man.
See you too, brother.
Awesome. Well, you're located not too far from me. I'm in Knoxville, and remind me where you are.
Yeah, I'm North Georgia, small little town called Brazelton.
That's right. Yeah, I remember when we were talking last, I was looking on the map. I try to do that with everybody, but I'm like, oh, you're just down the road a few hours.
Yeah, I know. We still got to meet up, make time to
absolutely.
do dumb stuff.
Yeah. Well, Grant, SimpleCheck is fascinating to me. You know, as I work in the world of marketing, digital marketing, and all that fun stuff, you know, that world plus sales is slowly drifting closer and closer together. But, you know, with SimpleCheck, when I think of it as a way to reduce the amount of time wasted wondering if a prospect has the ability to pay. And I know that's probably an oversimplification, but man, I'd love to dive into SimpleCheck, what it brings to the table, and I'm sure questions will pop up organically as we have this conversation.
Sure. Yeah, you know, there's really three different ways that people typically think about it. The first is why I built it in the first place as a former sales rep for 10 plus years, managing, training, selling, you know, for a variety of different companies. And it was to have real pre-qualification data before I would pick up the phone, right? So that I would actually know who can pay and how much and what's going to be the method of transacting. So I'm not wasting my time. So sales reps think about it essentially like, okay, this is my X-ray vision to know how I can make this deal work if I can have a deal in the first place. For marketing, though, they look at it a little bit different. They just view it as some of the most valuable data that you can have for training ad platforms to deliver qualified customers. Because the cool thing is just backfeeding it, ad platforms get smarter. I know it's an oversimplification, but you know, with the conversion API that Meta offers, for example, all you got to do is set up a backfeeding loop. And then instead of having, you know, broken sales attribution data over a long period, you've got instant visibility, which is what the ad platforms want in the first place. So it makes a huge difference there. And then, you know, leadership teams for some of the bigger companies that we work with, they view it honestly as just accountability. That way they know what department needs the work, right? Because sales is always going to blame the leads. Marketing is always going to blame the sales reps. And then everyone else goes, well, you just couldn't retain the client. You know, when someone bounces on their 48-month, $100 a month payment plan that they shouldn't have signed up for in the first place. So when you have real data, you actually have a measuring stick to contrast each department against, so you can actually identify the real bottleneck and not break what's currently working. So,
gotcha. So how does it work? When I think we talked last, it's name, email, and or phone number. That's, you don't need a credit score per se. It's anything intrusive like that.
Correct. Yeah. All we need is name, email, phone number. We bounce through a couple different validation layers to also match with IP address to validate identity, consent records, all that good stuff. In long story short, fully FCRA compliant to run SimpleCheck reports, provided you actually use our systems. That can be done with a custom build if a company doesn't want to change any of their infrastructure, or they can just plug and play our new smart forms, and it's just a one-click solution. But then all that's needed is that name, email, phone number, where you're already paying to capture, right? If you're running any sort of lead ads or trying to book calls, for example, but now you actually have each lead's financial viability, from credit scores to available spend today, income, investable assets if necessary. There's a lot of different data points that we can get depending on what suits a sales process best, but nothing invasive, totally above board and legal. So it's pretty nifty.
Yeah. When I think about that from a technology background, without giving away anything proprietary to anyone like that, but how are you able to do that? I mean, I can't even begin to comprehend just name, email, phone number gives you access to all that.
Yeah, well, you got to think, you know, credit card companies, loan loan companies, all of this. If you've ever received pre-qualified offers in the mail, you would know that this is already happening behind the scenes, sometimes even without your consent. And the lines can get a little bit blurred there. Some institutions, some might consider too big to fail, so to speak, right? Get a slap on the wrist and sweep it under the rug. Everything that we do is 100% above board, legal and compliant. There are consent language disclosures. We capture IP address as a form of a digital signature and identity validation. But what's cool, I mean, you can basically be subject to the system that you may or may not like. Everyone has a credit score. It's indicative of our, propensity to pay our obligations on time. This data is out there. Now, without the proper infrastructure, you can't access it. So that's what we built. It's not like we invented credit scores or anything like that, but we did build a system to streamline the use case for companies that sell expensive stuff to consumers.
Excellent. So let's dive into some of the best industries or the use cases here. So, we work with a lot of coaches and people that sell online products that are looking to scale up their business. What are some of the most common industries that you work with or verticals?
That happens to be our main foothold.
Okay.
Largely just because of the network that I accrued over the decade of working in that industry, selling those offers and managing those teams. But we've branched out into a few others. We actually originally launched Simple Check also in dental for being like a first look for patient financing. And we've gone through some iterations since then, obviously. But basically any industry where you're generating leads, not buying them, right? So like someone who's just buying lists or cold calling from a directory, they wouldn't be able to use Simple Check. It wouldn't be compliant. So we don't allow a use case like that.
Yeah.
You have to be capturing leads where someone's giving you their name, email, phone number for an opt-in form, booking, webinar registration, anything like that. So if you have inbound leads and you sell something that's, $4,000 or up is a pretty typical baseline, then there's really no case in which it doesn't make sense to have. Now, there's other companies like some high ticket e-commerce that are also using our stuff just because of the impact on targeting, right, from an ads level. But we don't actively go after those because it's a little bit more math to move around to make it work margins wise.
Okay. So let's take the use case of a high ticket coach, somebody that sells programs starting at $3,000 all the way up to about $30,000. So they've built digital marketing programs. They're getting inbound leads by the dozens each week. And so they have, let's just call it 3 salespeople. So with Simple Check, then it integrates with the form itself. Is that how it works, or is it a separate form? Talk me through that process.
Yeah, when we launched about 2.5 years ago now, time's flying. Over that time span, up until a few weeks ago, everything was a custom build. We would come in and build out our infrastructure around the company's existing systems. So your opt-in forms would look the same, your scheduling forms would look the same, CRM looks the same, all of that. We just handle the back end. And so anywhere that you're capturing leads now inside your CRM, instead of just seeing Bob Smith, right? So like Bob Smith can spend $20,000 today, as an example. Can be a little bit cost prohibitive for some companies that are maybe a little bit newer, not as much revenue to be able to handle the tech build out and all that. So that's why we launched Smartform, which actually does have a free trial. It makes it really easy for people to get in. If you're using anything right now to capture leads or book calls, you can just replace that with Smartform. And not only will you have the Simple Check reports that you can just enable by default, and you only pay for what you use, but it'll also progressively capture more leads. What's funny is about 30% of people who come to forms and start filling them out, be it opt-in or booking, they don't finish, be it distractions or can't find a time that works or, phone rings, baby cries, etc. We progressive capture those leads. So you can't run reports until they do hit submit, but you'll capture 30% more leads from just using it anyway. So that's one of the, I guess, the 2 paths, so to speak, of being able to integrate and have that data. And what's cool is I've seen it used on so many different stages of a sales process. Companies that are really data hungry and looking to scale ads fast will actually run it top of funnel on every lead. That way, Facebook has as much data as possible to drive better conversions quicker.
Yeah.
Some companies that are a little bit more established, more seasoned, maybe they run like a low ticket front end offer, then they'll just run reports on those low ticket purchases to know who to give a call to ascend. And that, if you're dealing with at least 1,000 low ticket purchases a month, you could just run it on that stage and still get the ad benefits.
Yeah.
But then your team knows where to actually prioritize time.
Yeah.
Nuts, just for a quick statistic, we found that companies who, we start off on, we're really hands-on over those first 30 days. We typically see in the ballpark of about 20 to 25% of their leads are actually qualified to buy their core program. Which means 75% of the budget is just being blown on people who literally can't afford it on an ad set level. Now that can be helped with the data for sure, but you don't want your sales reps spending 75% of their time with unproductive tasks either. So if you have people that are working a leads list in your CRM, wouldn't it make sense to sort from most to least qualified based on data that's true, so that when you pick up the phone, you know that it's not going to be a financial issue. You might need to do some, persuasion and actually do your job and sell it. If they want it and they can afford it, people typically buy. So we just handle that second part of the equation.
Gotcha. That makes a ton of sense. So a lot of the clients that we work with use HighLevel or GoHighLevel for their all-in-one platform, especially with sales forms, calendars, and whatnot. So you're saying that with Simple Form, we could replace the front-end form and or calendar, and then we could also pipe that data into HighLevel, or does it natively integrate? Or tell me about that.
Yeah. So if someone's using anything other than GoHighLevel, currently, as of recording this, until we have all the rest of the native integrations built out, you can webhook data wherever you need to. But
cool. Yeah.
We love GHL. Tons of our clients use them. So that was our first native integration. If you use SmartForm and you just plug and play that instead of your lead capture calendar, the native integration automatically pulls all of the data into your custom fields just as you would want. So it's literally a one-click install. You just put in your API key and you're done.
Gotcha. So what about, I'm going to get a little technical for a second, but what about with the high-level reporting? So we're looking at inbound calls over in the, I believe it's the the appointment reporting. And then if somebody schedules in SmartForm, then that wouldn't be tied to HighLevel unless there's ways. You see what I'm saying? As far as reporting.
So it pulls all the data in. The calendar that we actually use is straight through Google Calendar. So you just sync your Google Calendar for any event types, all that. It sends the reminder emails natively from your email, all that good stuff. But then it pulls in a contact straight into GHL API in the same way that GHL would just capture a contact or an opportunity in the first place. So it's really seamless once you just plug it in.
Okay. Gotcha. And then whether you use GHL reporting features or SimpleCheck/SmartForm reporting features, then you could basically verify and audit the quantity of calls, etc. From there. Okay.
Yeah. We're still working on making the reporting a bit more robust in the SmartForm portal itself. I mean, you'll be able to track all your leads that are progressive captured, your bookings, manage all that stuff. But until we've rolled out some of our next iterations, which I'm going to be a little bit secretive of because I'm really excited about it. It'll be a big product launch. GHL is still going to be where you want to actually manage the majority of the data because it'll all be pushed in there, and GHL's features for reports and lists and stuff like that are still going to be the way to go.
Gotcha. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we talked about SmartForm and how that's a lower cost entry into SimpleCheck as a company as a whole, if the company is not as established, etc. But in terms of SimpleCheck, I can think of SimpleCheck as, all right, I need this. I'm a growing company. I want y'all to do a custom tech build out as well. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, you can do it. And I don't mean to misrepresent in that, a company has to be super established in order to warrant a custom build. It's more of the preference, actually. So we have some pretty large merchants that, because of the progressive capture and the smart route tech, they just want to replace their Calendly that they're paying per seat for something that's more intelligent and just works better.
Gotcha.
And there's some companies that have spent, just a ridiculous amount of time, effort, and energy, and sometimes even money, split testing down to the font size of the button on their webinar registration form. And, they don't want anything to look different, but they need the data. And that's fine. So we'll do a custom build. And the cost just depends on the complexity of the build. If someone's using GHL for most of their stuff, we can typically get it done for, about $3,000 one time, taking care of everything. And then if we need redeployments, no sweat. We've pieced together some complex ecosystems, though, between like Keep and HubSpot, Close, GHL, Zapier, Make, N8N, and everything needs to talk perfectly. You're going to be creeping up, as far as cost goes. But it's just a matter of preference.
Gotcha. As of July of 2025. So if someone's listening to this in 2030, it's probably going to be a little bit more.
Really wants it to be a lot more. But we'll just be fair, because it's just a matter of comping our dev time that could be spent on developing internal features for doing one of those custom builds. We're happy to do it. Yeah, we're going to make a lot of money if you run a lot of reports, and you're going to be happy to pay the bill, but it's just balancing everyone's interests.
Hey, Daniel Pope here. Real quick, I want to give you a huge thanks for listening. If you're enjoying it, I'd love it if you share with others. That's how I get the word out, by you sharing it with somebody that could really benefit from this. Now, I started this podcast to stand out above the noise, to give real growth tactics in a crazy world when others may give some misinformation or not cover everything you need to know. That's not my MO. My MO is being able to give back, being able to help others see what they actually need to do in order to grow. And that's why personally, my company, Be Known, we don't offer any courses or coaching programs. We're a done-for-you service provider because we know in this world, sometimes people just need a helping hand, a connected team, and an expert to be there every step of the way. So again, I really appreciate you listening, and talk to you soon.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, I want to shift gears here towards, the buyer behavior in 2025 or post-COVID, essentially. I know it's been a few years since the crazy C word there, but when I think about some of the clients that we're working with, it's a lot of uncertainty around, quality of leads versus close rates versus where can the business even head? And so I think the biggest word there is just uncertainty. A customer journey, they're just uncertain about where their business can head. How viable it is to scale in 2025 versus use this as a more of a planning year, or just like, all right, a little bit of a retreat to improve everything and then head into 2026. I'm curious what you're seeing with clients.
It's kind of a big sifting. Things used to be really easy when Apple would just be allowed to spy on everything you did, and there wasn't as much of a competitive landscape. I started online advertising and selling back in 2015. So that was when, I'm not that smart, and I just launched a couple ads and made money. It's not quite as simple now. That's more competitive. You got to be a lot more obsessive about your data and attribution, and more intelligent about your sales cycle, because attention spans are shorter now than ever too. But it's not that there's not opportunity. It's just going to those who are well equipped to handle it, right? Like anytime there's a sifting and things get harder, inevitably those who are not capable of adapting are going to fall out of the industry. And then all of a sudden, what do we have again? It's the new cycle of less competition. So I see some of our merchants that have gone from, like a 2 to 3 ROAS to, this is going to sound crazy, but 8, 10, and we have one that's just sent in a case study. They're doing 16x ROAS from when they previously started about 4. It's nuts. And so as much as it might feel hard, it's still worth it. Because what are you going to do? Just quit the business and go get a job? It's not like that's more stable and secure. So it's just a matter of being able to adapt to what's going on. One of the biggest things that I found, and I'll harp on, I was just at 4 Rooms. We had one of the meta ads experts there, internal team. It was one of those hey, we can't record this kind of sessions. and she was talking about kind of where Meta is going, taking a lot more control over the targeting aspects. I mean, Zuckerberg even had a talk where he was basically like, the way we're going is you'll tell us what you sell and what you want to pay for a customer, and we'll handle everything there. Right. So what does that mean? Well, the platform's taking more control can be a good thing because they have really powerful machine learning algorithms, but that relies on good data.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have your CAPI set up, you're not using something like a Cometly or a HiROAS, or like working with professionals like yourself that really know how to actually set up a system to manage the data and backfeed it properly. Well, with Facebook taking more control, if it's flying blind, you're going to get wrecked. So you got to have all the infrastructure in place for proper data management. And candidly, I think you should have something like Simple Check so that you're not relying on an ever shrinking window of cookie attribution and spying that browsers are able to do. Right? You need to be able to have that data the second someone opts in, because it's exponentially more valuable than hoping, CRM events or sales attribution down the road actually pans out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely subscribe to that, especially the fact that, I've talked about Meta, and specifically Meta ads, before as being the smartest guy in the room. And it is smarter than most humans all put together in a room because it has the data on most humans, and it's a machine. And so it can think a lot quicker. Anyway, very oversimplified way to look at it, but I completely subscribe to that because, yes, the data is only good as the discipline behind the system and the structure and integrity of the system that you have, the business system. And that's why I'm so, on my side, I'm so hell-bent on creating great systems and foundations and structures so that companies like yours can come in and say, man, this was the easiest client we've ever worked with, because they work with Be Known, or they work with a company that is lockstep with us in terms of data integrity and making sure that everything is sound. Anyway, with that being said, I want to go back to the ROAS. So you talked about some case studies real quick about some ROAS quadrupling even. What were the common factors there? Were they running a certain type of funnel? Obviously, they're using Simple Check, but tell me about it.
Yeah. We actually just published a case study on one of these where one of these clients like straight screen shared his whole setup. It was really cool. So the biggest common thread above anything else, even, like offer price point or like sales process and stuff like that, is how you give the data to Meta. So what we found the best setup is to have basically custom events triggered based on the data, in not just positive, but also negative. And this is where like some of our initial iterations of like, hey, feedback to your conversion API when you have a qualified lead. Like that's good. It makes a big difference. So an example of that would be filtering by credit score. If above 650, send. If below, don't. But what we started seeing recently, it was about a month ago or so, that our first merchant like really kind of like cracked this. And I don't know why everyone didn't just do this in the first place, but live and learn. He actually takes now those unqualifieds and then creates basically an audience in Meta that's then excluded for 60 days.
Nice. Yep.
And so all that means is that Meta, because they're going based on credit score, right? So every month the bureaus are going to cut a new report. So it's not like, for example, if someone has a 500 credit score, that tomorrow it's going to be 700 and they're capable of getting financing and buying, or their available credit drastically changes. It's usually going to be 30 to 60 days. Now, things can change in that time frame, but do you really want to blow ad budget on people that we've already proven with the data are physically incapable of buying? No. So when we tell Facebook, hey, I want more people like this, and then they create their lookalikes from that list, and then they exclude those who are proven to be incapable of buying from retargeting, then all that really means from like a simple sense is that you're paying to target qualified people who can buy your stuff, and you're not paying to advertise to people who can't. And so as simple as that is, the impact on net ROAS is huge. way far and away offsets the usage billing from actually running simple check reports. Like, it's astronomical. We have a calculator on the site that you can test it with average user data. But that's the biggest thing. I mean, above all else. And then obviously, sell an expensive product with good margins that you have good fulfillment for, so clients don't just charge back and disappear. But that's kind of a no-brainer, I hope.
I hope. Yeah. So speaking of that, I hope, I want to dumb it down for a second, and let's talk to the listener who maybe has been thinking about a salesperson. And let's flash forward 6 months in their business. They brought on a salesperson. They haven't yet explored Simple Check or the form functionality, but they're curious about it. Walk me through the best case scenario after they subscribe to the platform. Let's say they're using the form. After they subscribe, let's talk about that customer journey there.
Well, I guess we'll start with like the inverse, so there can be contrast. I'm reminded of one of our earlier clients. She's still rocking and rolling. Her name's Lindsay. She came on at the recommendation of a friend who was a current user. He's like, yo, you got to try this. I know you're struggling with the leads right now. Just give it a shot. And then a couple weeks later, her testimonial video comes in, and she's talking about how she was literally about to lose her only closer. I'm like, well, I didn't even know this. And she goes on to basically say, yeah, I was going to lose my only closer because she was sick and tired of dealing with unqualified leads. But I didn't think the leads were an issue. We found out after running Simple Check that only about 10% of the folks that were coming into our funnel could even afford the down payment. And so she, in her own words, basically like, I'm berating my sales rep because I'm like, you're not doing a good job. Turns out, how could she?
Yeah.
You can't squeeze juice from a rock. And so if you don't have that data, it's really easy to then misattribute what the bottleneck is. And it really sucks to have a great salesperson who could crush it for you that doesn't get good opportunities and then leaves. And then you deal with the churn cost of having to, recruit, hire, train, deal with the opportunity cost of them, not being great from day one and all that good stuff. So it's really important that you have that measuring stick to judge against. Now, let's say flip side, someone's spending simple math, 30 grand a month on ads. 30% of leads that you're paying for statistically just don't finish the forms, which means you're blowing about 9 grand a month on ads to literally have people abandon forms and you never capture the lead in the first place. So if you have smart form, especially in an industry like right now, we don't have a massive user base because we just launched it only a few weeks ago after doing our initial beta testing and stuff, right? So it's actually still a competitive advantage. It'll become industry norm eventually, and then, convergence, it all comes out in the wash, but you'll literally capture 30% more leads than your competition on the same ad spend. So your reps will have more opportunities. And the thing about good salespeople is if they have a full pipeline of people who can pay, they stick around because they're making a lot of money. And if they're making a lot of money, it means you're making a lot of money. So that's kind of, in simple terms, what the contrast is. It's like you could either fly blind and hope things work out. Maybe they do, but if they do, how do you replicate it? How do you scale what you don't know to be true? On the flip side.
Excellent. So the closer in this case, they would log into GoHighLevel and they would have a smart list set up and they could view, hey, I got John Doe, email address, phone number, last activity date, and then, here's a column and it says ability to buy, purchasing power, whatever the standard column name is. Is that essentially it?
Yep, exactly. So the most useful for most people is going to be the Simple Check spendable credit.
Okay.
Because what that custom field is going to denote is the difference between someone's current access to credit, so their current limits minus their current utilization. Someone's got 20 grand worth of credit card limits and they've used 10,000 of it. Then that means they've got 10 grand that they could slide their card for today without getting approved for anything else. That's their liquidity immediately when you go to collect payment. So that's going to be the most useful for most people. If you have any point of sale customer financing, right? Like, a Klarna, Affirm, Sezzle, Sci-Fi, My Abundant. I mean, there's a lot of different ones. Terms vary. Do your research to make sure you get one that's going to actually work for you margins wise. That credit score is going to then determine, okay, can I actually get them approved for financing? And so if you have both, then I'm, Joe, the sales rep. I got Bob on my calendar today. I know, and he's got, 10 grand to spend, and he's got a 600 credit score. We'll just say, okay. If I have a $5,000 program, I know that's going to be a credit card transaction. That's exactly how I'm going to treat it. If Bob had $2,000 worth of available credit, but he's got a 700 credit score, and we have a decent lender. I mean, almost any lender is going to consider prime to be, 680 and up, and they'll cover that. Then I know that's going to be a financing deal. So I'm not going to pitch the pay in full. I'm going to pitch terms. Right? In the same way that cars are sold, real estate is sold, high-end appliances, furniture. You don't say, hey, drive off today, $42,000. You say drive off today for $300 down.
Yeah.
And so that's how you're going to actually orchestrate your sales process for a better take rate. And so if you know that information ahead of time, you don't just know who can pay, but you know how. Yeah. And so then you're able to actually structure your sales process accordingly. So that's how they would do it, just in the same, CRM that you're used to dealing with, where you see the phone number, look down a little bit, and you'll see what the propensity to pay is.
Yeah, that was solid right there. That's a talking point. Well, I want to shift gears again because I feel like I have a very good understanding of Simple Check, Smart Form, and just really the sales process that's needed with that. But I want to shift gears over to business lessons. And just like any good entrepreneur, we've got lessons that we've learned, lessons that we should have learned sooner rather than later, mistakes along the way. But I want to hear about your journey with Simple Check and just really what you've learned along the way building the business.
Yikes.
I know that's super vague and loaded, but we can take it any direction.
A lot of expensive lessons.
I bet, especially in the software field. Any wasted dev hours? Any rabbit hole project you went down that was like, oh, this was a waste of time and money?
Well, less of a wasted dev project and actually more of a dev that didn't work out. We'd have 3 years under our belt if our original developer had not bailed. I mean, almost on the finish line. Like we were right there. It was literally 8 grueling months of work to get Simple Check V1 originally built. Fell apart, disappeared. We ended up having to rebuild from scratch. That sucked. It was a huge lesson for me in leadership and actually being a good founder and manager. I don't have that inclination as much naturally. I was a way better sales rep and trainer than a sales manager, totally different skill sets. And I conflated the success in persuasion to transfer over to this new role that I had never really had before. Big, expensive lesson there because there was a lot of dev time and dev costs, lost opportunity time, all of that stuff. So that really sucked. Go in with a ruthless ambition to whatever project you deem worthy of your time, effort, and energy. But keep in mind that you don't know what you don't know, and look for and lean on those who have been there first and made the mistakes, so you don't have to pay the ignorance tax like I did.
Yeah.
That'd be one of the most expensive ones that I dealt with.
Hey, how do you know when you need a ripcord? Or how do you determine a ripcord for project saying, hey, actually, this is not going to work out. This feature, this thing we're building. You ever bake that in, or is it just, we're going?
Yeah, honestly, that's a tough one for me to give good direction on because my true answer is God. I pray on it.
Yeah.
And I didn't used to, and it cost me a ton because I'm still relatively new in my faith. It was 2020 when I got saved because I had a cancer scare.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Prior to that, it was just not, if I see it, it's real. If I don't, it's not. And so that was a whole big thing. And so I genuinely go to God with my stuff, because what's crazy is there's been a lot of things that logically I should have, could have, and would have ripped the cord from had I not had confirmation from something much bigger than me.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put that into a framework, so to speak, but
No, I think that's a great answer. It's for me, I lean a lot into my intuition and also my gut. And there are times when everything logically says, Daniel, you don't need to do this. I'm like, hey, hold on. I got a feeling. I got that feeling. And so, yeah, that encourages me to pray more as well. I have a background in I grew up in a Southern Baptist megachurch.
okay.
Yeah, I don't normally talk about this, but we're talking about it. So with megachurch came a ton of opportunity, but with megachurch came a lot of baggage. I think baggage is a good way to put it. Words were swirling in my head, and all I could think of was baggage. And so, for me, I try to give thanks and be very grateful, but I need to use prayer more so in decision making. So I think the deadly combination is prayer plus past decisions plus a little bit of that gut feeling. And hey, maybe it was the spicy chili I had for lunch, but
Amen. I'll try and I'll give like a worldly answer component to it as well. There's two things. Charlie Munger, he used to say like a not to-do list is more important than a to-do list, because on record basically saying, I just want to know where I'm going to die so I never go there. But you don't know that unless you've provided yourself space for reflection. Because if you're too close to the forest, or if you're too close to the trees, you can't see the forest, right? And then Rockefeller, whatever you will, about the guy. The book, his biography, was really, really solid. I like to try and understand how people think. And the thing that stood out most to me about his book, actually, was what they wrote into the company code of conduct at Standard Oil back in the day. It was basically like number 1 in the employee manual. It should be every man's moral imperative that he replace himself in his duties as soon as humanly possible, such that he has nothing but time to put his feet up on his desk and think about how to make Standard more money. And that one's real interesting, because so often I'm subject to it, especially entrepreneur by nature, a little bit of OCD, ADD, whatever, shiny objects, right? If you try and build a long-term, big picture business, which is a complex ecosystem by nature, with emotional, in the moment decisions based on how something feels or looks with a short look back window, you're going to make a lot more mistakes.
Yeah.
And those mistakes cost you. And so the more you can remove yourself and create that space from a logical thinker, you just have time to analyze what the scenarios are going to be before you've put pen to paper and created a system that you might need to break down. For me, that space is my secret place where I get to actually pray and look for guidance. But either way, regardless of your faith, for, against, or otherwise, giving yourself that space to really process before taking that action, I think, is one of the most underrated things that you can do in business.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I met with a mentor of mine on last Friday, and we were talking through, just some growing pains in business and whatnot. But we also talked through the fact that I don't normally schedule meetings on Friday, and except for, like coffee meetings or whatever, if I'm out and about, which are just with mentors or friends. But the point I'm making is, I had a meeting come up 3 p.m. in the afternoon every Friday from here on out. And I'm thinking to myself, man, that completely bombs my Friday calendar. because it's not like it's the first thing in the morning. It is a sore thumb sticking out there 3 p.m. on the calendar. And so I went into it with that mindset, just not looking forward to it. He said, Daniel, I understand that you don't normally, quote unquote, work or have meetings on Fridays, but how about you shift your perspective to, Daniel, what about if you take Fridays off? Friday mornings off. Mornings is the specific keyword. Friday mornings off, and you go for a hike or you take time for yourself, and then you come back renewed and recharged for this Friday afternoon meeting, and maybe you work 2 p.m. to 3:30 or 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Fridays, and you take Friday mornings off. And I said, you know what? I've never thought about it like that, because for some reason I'm always gung-ho about, all right, get the morning stuff out of the way and just work till I don't have anything else, and then my evenings are free.
Yeah.
But by evenings, I'm burnt out. I'm toast. I hit the gym, and it's either a great gym session or it's a lackluster one due to the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, that got me thinking about when you said, you know, you have your own place, and whatever faith you are, take time to reflect, take time to be still. And from there, benefits will come out of it. But, well, it's relevant. That's what I'm getting at.
Totally. I wish I could credit the quote. I can't remember who said it, but it's basically like the only way to clear muddy water is to be still and to not swish around in it. You gotta let it chill out for a little bit.
Yes. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott. No, that's great.
I had that quote on my whiteboard behind me the entire time filming my old sales course years ago. This is a little Easter egg.
Yes. That's funny. Well, Grant, this has been a lot of different topics comprised or condensed into a small amount of time, but anything you want to leave us with other than where to find you? We'll get to that last.
I want to leave you with. Man, what's coming to me right now, it's maybe a little kitschy, but it's true. And so that's why it's used so often. You just got to choose your heart. Everything's going to suck a little bit. So choose what ultimately is going to leave you with the least amount of regrets at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because old mentor of mine said that the discomfort of transformation and new behavior fades far faster than the pain of regret. That one rung true to me. So no matter what you're doing, business life, otherwise, you can't avoid the suck. So choose your battles and, give it your all. Just one of my biggest things to live by, and I'm not perfect at this by any means. I'm a fallible human like all of us. But to the best of my ability, I don't want me to be the variable that's questioned. So if I'm trying a new strategy, a new business, or anything like that, I'll set, basically like a milestone time-wise that I will reassess results at that point. In the meantime, it's 100% commitment, no excuses in the meantime, because I want to know if the freaking thing worked.
Yeah.
And I don't want to question if I didn't work the thing. So that's what I'd leave you with.
Yeah. I think that's a very solid point. A lot of times we get in our own heads about things, and we also don't do the things that work successfully, consistently. We don't do enough of the things that work. So, well said.
Facts. Got to hit your free throws.
What'd you say?
I said facts. You got to hit your free throws.
Yeah. So Grant, where can they find Simple Check?
Pretty simple. It's simplecheck.com. And if you want to check out SmartForm in particular, it's simplecheck.com/SmartForm. All one word, like smart form. We've got a free trial. Check it out. Would love to have you within the first 1,000 users we're still looking to acquire. And, we're going to continue building the product and feature requests and stuff around you as a user. So, yeah.
Excellent. Well, man, I really appreciate your time today. I know people listening to this will get a ton of value out of Simple Check, and smart form. But other than that, I wish you well on your journey, and we'll talk soon.
Same to you, brother. We got to get together soon in person. We're
Oh,
almost
absolutely.
neighbors, so
We will. All right, Grant. Thanks, man.
thanks for having me.